Hello everyone, it's Jen from Old Tinker's Studio. In this tutorial, we will be learning how to work with curves in Blender 2.9. So let's get on with the tutorial. Curves are types of objects in Blender that are different than mesh objects. Blender uses both Bezier and NURBS curves. Bezier curves have control points that you can set. NURBS curves are more efficient to calculate when they are twisted and turned. Splines are the substructure of the curve. The splines are what make up the curve. Splines define the shape of the curve and can be altered by using the control points. Blender uses three types of splines. The poly splines are the simplest type of splines. They're used when one converts a mesh to curves. For example, if I add a circle to the scene, tab into edit mode, we can see that the circle is a mesh with vertices. If, however, I tab back into object mode and choose Convert Curve from Mesh Text, I now see that the mesh is changed into a curve. By default in Blender 2.9, the direction of the handles is hidden. Turn this option on, open the Overlay menu, and activate Handles. The Bezier curve and Bezier circles have control points and handles with segments in between two control points. The handles themselves control the curvature of the segment. There are 5 types of Bezier handles available to us. The default handle type is the aligned, which allows you to have a continuous curve without sharp angles. Other types can be accessed with the V key. Automatic handles ensure the smoothest result. If the handles are moved, then they are converted into a aligned handle. Vector handles allow you to make curves that are straight lines or made up of sharp corners. Free handles make the handles independent of one another. Toggle free align handles are a mixture of the free and aligned handle type. Bezier circles are approximations of circles, but NURBS circles are exact circles. NURBS curves and circles are splines that have a weight property that controls how much of an influence a control point has on the surface. You can access the same 5 types of handles with the NURBS curves and circles. In edit mode, we have 5 tools that help us when working with curves. The Draw tool allows you to draw a freehand curve with the grease pencil. The Extrude tool allows you to extrude a control point. The Extrude to Cursor tool allows you to extrude a control point based upon where the cursor is. The Radius tool allows you to expand or contract the radius of a curve point. Now hold down the left mouse button and drag, Notice that the spline directional arrows become larger. We now open the Object Data Properties tab and increase the bevel depth Notice how the radius is different at the end where I used the radius tool. Tilt tool allows you to change the tilt angle of the arrows on the curve. The randomize tools allows you to randomize the points of the curve. If I duplicate the curve, then convert it to a mesh, can then use the shear tool. In edit mode, the shear tool allows you to select faces, and then shear them along various axes. You can also select a curve and right-click to access more options, such as subdividing, mirroring, and snapping. We will take a quick look at the options available in the Data Object Properties. The Shape section allows us to choose between 2D and 3D for the dimensions. By default, 3D is the chosen option. The only difference is that 2D only allows you to move the control points along the X and Y axes, whereas the 3D option also allows you to move the control points along the Z axis. Resolution is the number of points that are computed between every pair of control points. Twist controls the twisting effect of the curve's normals. Smooth removes the twist from the curve. Fill determines how a curve is displayed, whether half or full. The Fill Deformed option fills the curve after applying any modifications that might deform the curve, such as modifiers. Radius makes the deformed object scale by the set curve radius. Stretch allows you to stretch or squeeze the mesh object over the entire curve. Bounds clamp means that the object and mesh offset along the deformation axis is ignored. Texture space gives you the options to change your texture space location and size. Now let's look at the geometry section. Offset will move the extrusion parallel to the curve normals. Extrude will extrude the curve along the local z-axis, turning a one-dimensional curve into a two-dimensional curve. Taper object causes the curve to get thinner at one end. Map taper will apply the taper only to the beveled part of the curve. Bevel depth changes the size of the bevel. Resolution alters the smoothness of the bevel. Object specifies a curve object that can be extruded along the curve. Fill caps will fill the ends of the beveled curve. Bevel start and end determines the start and end of a bevel along the curve. Bevel mapping start and end controls the relation between the bevel factors and the rendered start and end. The path animation section determines how a child object moves along a curve. Frames is the number of frames needed for the child object to follow the curve. Evaluation time is the parametric position along the curve where the child object should be located on the curve. Follow rotates the child object along the curvature of the curve. The active spline section is used to edit the properties of the active curve. Cyclic closes the active curve. Resolution alters the resolution of the segments by changing the number of divisions. Interpolation tilt is only available for the Bezier curve. It alters how Blender calculates the tilt of the segment. Radius is also only available for the Bezier curve. It alters how Blender calculates the radius of the bevel curve. Smooth uses smooth shading for the geometry. Bezier is only available for the NURBS curve. It makes the NURBS curve act more like a Bezier curve. Endpoint is also only available for the NURBS curve. It makes the curve contact the end control point. Border, an option only for the NURBS curve, determines the area of influence of the control points over the curve. Now we will explore a few practical examples of using curves. First, we will make a simple pipe. Add a cube and add a Bezier curve. Select the Bezier curve and tab in Edit mode. Rotate the curve around the x-axis 90 degrees, then around the y-axis 90 degrees. Scale the curve as needed. Scale the curve along the x-axis 0 degrees to make it straight. Right-click and subdivide the curve with 2 cuts. Select the top point and rotate it around the y-axis -90 degrees. Then move the point to straighten the center of the curve. Select the bottom point, rotate it around the y-axis 90 degrees, then move the point to straighten the center of the curve. And move the entire curve along the x-axis until it intersects with the cube. In the Object Data Properties tab, under the Geometry section, increase the bevel depth. When you have the curve adjusted to your liking, tab back into Object Mode. Right-click on the curve, choose Convert to Mesh. Now you can tab into Edit Mode and make any changes you wish to the mesh. For the second example, you need to go under Preferences and make sure you have the Add Curve Extra Objects activated. Add a cylinder. Duplicate the cylinder and move it to the side. Select both cylinders. Using Shift-A, Curves, Knots, Catenary. Under the catenary options, you can change the variable A option to change the amount of droop that the curve has. Increase the bevel depth until you get your desired look. If you have a request for a tutorial or a question about Blender, feel free to leave a comment. If you're interested in learning more about 3D art and animation, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.